Analyst and Bloomberg View columnist Josh Rogin, and CNN presidential historian and Rice University American history professor Douglas Brinkley. I wonder if I could start with you, Josh. We just had Senator McCain on there. Dana Bash asked him, should the program as a whole be rethought here? I mean, you really have a perfect storm of mistakes in this case. Bad intelligence, in effect, not only killing an American hostage, an Italian hostage, but killing two American terror suspects or members of al-Qaeda without running the legal traps necessary to kill an American. I mean, this is a real intelligence failure here. In light of all the other questions about this program, civilian casualties on the ground, reaction of host nations, do you see this as a watershed event for the U.S. drone program?
Thanks, Jim. Absolutely, yes, this is a watershed event. I've been speaking with counterterrorism officials and administration officials all day who worked on this program and who actually worked on the search for Warren Weinstein, and they all basically said the same thing. They said under the rules that were established, eventually, given enough time, mistakes like this were bound to happen. And this comes at the end of a years-long debate inside the diplomatic and intelligence community about what these rules should be, especially when it comes to a place like North Waziristan in Pakistan, where these counterterrorism operations are assumed to have taken place, because that's a place where we don't have intelligence on the ground. The Pakistani army can't get there. U.S. intelligence officials are sparse on the ground, so we're relying on secondhand information, signals intelligence, satellites, drones, and that's an imperfect system. And eventually, given that lack of visibility, something like this was going to happen. So that mandates a discussion both inside the government and inside the Congress and amongst us in the public about how to fix that. And that discussion is not taking place.
Afghanistan, Pakistan is certainly not the only place where you have intelligence weakness. You've just pulled out a lot of resources from Yemen, where you have AQAP. In fact, there were 2 drone strikes earlier this week on Monday and Wednesday. It's long been a black hole inside Syria, where you have ISIS. Douglas Brinkley, I wonder, when we look at the president here, this is a president who, enormously ratcheted up the drone program. The number of strikes compared to the George W. Bush administration, markedly different, marked increase. You have this mistake. You certainly had the success of a risky counterterror operation in killing Osama bin Laden, but you've had failed rescue attempts for American hostages of ISIS inside Syria. You had an operation in Yemen attempting to rescue a hostage there, where the hostage was killed by his captors during the firefight. Now you have this. How does this affect the president's legacy here in light of his role growing this program?
Barack Obama will always be associated with the drone program. It really came of age as a technology during his presidency. And we don't want to lose sight of the fact that the drones are really helping defeat al-Qaeda, that we hit the right compound. It was a terrible tragedy that's occurred here. And, we have to think clearly of Warren Weinstein as an American hero. Hopefully we'll be able to, he represents really USAID workers all over the world that are trying to fight for democracy and doing humanitarian good. But the president's going to have to get a report clearly on what happened and do some retooling here. We don't want a repeat of this. But I think the enemy here is al-Qaeda, and we have to be careful not to overbeat up on CIA or President Obama or our armed forces because of an event like this. It's tough to ferret out terrorists. We do the best we can, and mistakes at war are going to happen, and this is one of them.
No question, but let's be fair here, because you have cost-benefit analysis with any of this, and this is something that goes back to the Bush administration. Donald Rumsfeld asked this question: Are we killing them faster than we're creating them? And the thing about the drone program in these countries, a place like Pakistan, Afghanistan, you kill, whether they be fighters or suspected fighters or civilians in there. Oftentimes that leads others to join these extremist groups. Doesn't mean that you take away the tool, but you have to factor that, do you not, into the analysis as to whether it's worth it overall. I mean, Josh Rogin, is that part of the debate here in Washington?
Well, it was part of the debate, and this is really interesting because especially when it comes to Pakistan, there was a huge fight between the State Department and the embassy in Islamabad and the CIA over many years over this very question. There were many people inside the U.S. government who believed that these drone strikes were doing more harm than good, that they were hurting our relationship with both the Pakistani government and the Pakistani people, and that the intelligence just wasn't there. And a lot of those concerns are borne out in this tragedy. I mean, you saw spokesman Josh Earnest say today that the intelligence community had a high confidence that there were no civilians in the area, and that was obviously wrong. The problem was that the president's view on this was well known inside the administration, and everybody eventually had to come around to it. And this is a president who has shunned boots on the ground. He's shunned getting U.S. personnel involved in these conflicts, so he's relied on these drones and on these technologies, and that has costs and benefits. And in the end, that debate has always come out on the president's side because the president is ultimately in charge. So as long as Barack Obama is in power, that policy is not likely to change, and this will become now a more robust debate as we head into 2016.
Doug Brinkley, just a quick thought before we have to go. Is it worth it overall, in your view?
Absolutely. The one thing you'll find bipartisan support on is the drones program. You had John McCain saying we've got to fine-tune it, but it's got to go, and stay, and you have Barack Obama saying the same thing. The option of putting troops on the ground we can't do, and we have to decimate al-Qaeda. We have to fight the war on terror. This is the best that we have. Let's hope we can get better intelligence and that the drones can get more sophisticated in what they do so we don't kill innocent civilians in places like Pakistan either.
Right, well,
I would just say here that the drone policy has to be part of a more robust strategy to countering al-Qaeda. We can't just do drones. We have to have an engagement on the ideological level, on the diplomatic level, to solve this problem, because the drones alone just won't do it.
No question. The drone strike's only as good as the intelligence as well. Josh Rogan, Doug Brinkley, thanks very much. Brooke, back to you in Baltimore.